one day you and I, or even Sean and I, are going to have like a best of where we talk about what we talk about off camera because we can really get into good conversations off camera. And I'm like, oh shit, it's already 8:10. I got to get started. So, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome with our special guest host, Bob Rose. I'm Alan Orick. Sean, once again, is out tonight. Hopefully he gets back very soon. I talked to him yesterday. He is doing a lot better, but it's still very tough on him right now. So, but welcome, Bob. How you doing?
Oh, Alan, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to sit with at one or both of you guys always. Sean, brother, we all love you. You take as much time as you need. You have family sitting here waiting for you whenever you're ready to get back. But Under the Domers, I am so glad to be joining you tonight, and I thank you for taking some time out of your busy summer schedules. We're sitting only 3 weeks away, 3-ish weeks away from training camp, Alan. You can almost smell the football in the air. I'm excited. This is an off season that we have not experienced as New Orleans Saints fans. I'm about to pick one up too. This is an off season we have not experienced as New Orleans Saints fans in a long, long time. And I think all of us are just so anxious to see our family in football helmets get back onto the field.
I'll tell you, I know people make fun of me. My wife makes fun of me because I have every issue of this Lindy's Sports magazine. I have every issue starting with, I think, number 7 was the first one I ever picked up back in 1992 or 93. I picked up that one. And it's now issue 35, volume 35. So, but I have them all. And my wife's like, what are you going to do with this? Why do you have these magazines? I understand that you buy the new one, and I can see reading the new one, but when are you ever going to go back and read the one that's got Jim Everett and Jeff George on the cover? Jim Everett is a Saint, Jeff George is a Falcon from like 94. When are you going to go back and look at that one again? I said, I might. In fact, I'm going to look at it right now. And,
Lindy's Guide is by far the best preseason prognostication I've ever read. I'm like you. I've been collecting them since the 90s. I don't know exactly what year, but I know since the 90s. And I kept most, if not all of them for years. Now, after the last couple of moves, eventually I just got sick of moving X amount of boxes. So the stack of Lindy guys were one of the casualties of one of the moves. But yeah, by far the best prognostication guide. Obviously they keep things pretty general for each team, but they're pretty realistic too. It's definitely a good read.
Yeah, I don't know who did the Saints when I read it, but I think it was Duncan. I think it's Jeff Duncan who does it. But yeah, mine go back to Sheldon Mickles, who is the Advocate columnist in Baton Rouge for a long time. Les East wrote a few of them. So yeah, I've had these for a long, long time, and I've been reading them forever. And what I always liked about it was not only is it a position player by player, little brief write up, but I've always liked the homeless player section where they write a little bit about a homeless player, the draft grading and breakdown, the Hall of Fame stuff. I mean, it's a really well done magazine, and in an era where magazines are kind of going by the wayside, Lindy's is probably the only one I still buy. I have ESPN, the magazine, from the mid 90s. I have a football preview of that one because I think they had the Saints on the cover, and Pro Football Weekly was one. Okay, it's I'm looking at it right now as we're turning the pages. Who wrote this? Jeff Duncan. Okay. Yeah. Duncan, I think, has done the last few. I think Jeff Triplett even did a few of them for a while. Yeah, so, but yeah, I've got an Athlon Sports from 92. And I picked it up because it had the Dome Patrol on the cover. That's why I picked it up. I've got, I used to read Pro Football Weekly. Then Joel Bushbaum died, and it just wasn't nearly as good. And I don't think they even make it anymore. But that was one of the last ones I was picking up regularly. And I've looked at ESPN, Sports Illustrated. They had a few others that came and went, but Lindy's has probably been the most consistent for me. So it's been fun. First one in a long time that doesn't have Drew Brees on the cover. First one probably in about 15 years they didn't have Drew Brees. It's Alvin Kamara on the cover here locally. And I'm sure in your market it's either going to be the Eagles or the Steelers.
It's always the Steelers. Steelers and usually Browns. Sometimes they'll throw Bengals on there.
Okay.
Which has always cracked me up because you can see why Cleveland, because they're about 2 hours away from Pittsburgh. But the drive to Baltimore is about half the distance from Pittsburgh as the drive to Cincinnati. So I've always the people in this area, and I know I have friends tuning in, and Western Pennsylvania friends tuning in. So I try to be careful what I say on Twitter about Pennsylvania. But it's funny. You could be in Maryland or West Virginia in about an hour and a half from Pittsburgh, but you would think that it is literally across the country the way a lot of these people talk. It is. If you have to cross more than one bridge, even in the Pittsburgh area, if you have to cross more than one bridge to get someplace, they're not going to go, even if it only takes them 10 minutes to do it.
Hey, they got people down the bayou, and I love them as well, but they don't cross I-10. They don't go north of I-10. There ain't nothing they want to see north of I-10. So I mean, it's just, Point of Shan is all they need in life. Point of Shan and coquetry.
To each their own, right?
That's right. But okay. So the big news that came out last week, in fact, the day after we did the show, when we were talking about the moves the Saints have to make, lo and behold, they go and sign Ryan Ramczyk to a 5-year, $96 million extension, which I think is actually a bargain.
Same.
Considering he's the best right tackle in the NFL. So let's start with, what do you see out of this contract that really jumps out at you that you like?
And I agree with you. I think in the long run, especially, it's going to be a bargain for New Orleans, because I'll go you one further. I think Ryan Ramczyk is the best offensive lineman in the NFL at any position. And I believe in the long term, he is going to end up being a left tackle for the New Orleans Saints. And a clause that was built into his contract, I found very, very interesting, especially considering Teron Armstead is also scheduled to be a free agent at season's end. If Ryan Ramczyk earns an all-pro, I don't remember whether it's an all-pro berth or just a bid to the Pro Bowl.
All-pro.
As a left tackle, no matter what year that happened, from there on forward, his entire yearly contract gets escalated by $1 million.
Yeah.
And the reason, and I know you pretty well, so I'm fairly sure you feel the same way. One of the reasons why I feel that this is a bargain for New Orleans, if we're correct, and Ryan ends up being the left tackle, the market value for a top-notch left tackle is about $8 million, as it stands right now, about $8 million more per season than is over at right tackle. So, by them inking Ramczyk, even if that yearly salary escalates because he'll earn a Pro Bowl bid as a left tackle potentially, that's still a bargain for this team, considering Ryan's age, skill set, and versatility along that offensive line.
Absolutely. I can't agree with you more. And you brought up what was going to be my next question. The clause about him becoming a left tackle, that tells me that Armstead, this is his make or break year. He has to play 16 games. Granted, last year was the first year he was quote unquote healthy for all 16 games. He just had to miss, I think, 2 games because of COVID protocol. But he didn't actually, I don't think he actually had COVID. I think he was exposed to COVID and was in quarantine. I don't remember. Maybe he did have it, a mild case, but he didn't have what he's had his entire time with the Saints. The knee injury, the torn pec, the hip injury, all the little nagging things that caused him to miss games. Ryan Ramczyk, somebody that I can remember Ralph Marlboro on draft night on Twitter passing his joke saying, "Great, we just drafted a tackle with an arthritic hip," and yet Ryan Ramczyk hasn't missed a game.
Yeah,
knock on wood. He has been extremely durable, extremely healthy, and he is the best offensive lineman that we've got. And like you said, I believe he's probably one of the best offensive linemen in the league, if not the best. So this is interesting for me. I think that the Saints, unless Armstead has an unbelievable season, I think this is Armstead's last year as a Saint. I think the plan is to move him to left tackle, Ramczyk to left tackle, and Landon Young, I just was looking at this to make sure I was right. The sixth round pick from Kentucky this year. He's 6'7", 321. So he's very Zach Strief-ish in his size. Okay. I can see if Landon Young becomes the third tackle this year, that they try and groom him to move into the right tackle spot in 2022.
I can absolutely see that happening, and I like the Landon Young pick. He's got quick feet for a big man. The body type. If he was a little bit more squatly built, he'd be a perfect guard. But we know that the Saints love that versatility factor within their offensive linemen. I don't think he has the wingspan. Landon has the wingspan or quickness to be a left tackle. But like you said, they're not looking at him as left tackle. They're looking at him as a potential swing tackle. But if knock on wood, if something were to happen with Ramczyk Armstead this season, I think that they would immediately probably move Ramczyk over to the left side and put either Landon Young or James Hurst over at right tackle. And when when they re-signed Hurst this offseason, they re-signed him to a 2-year deal with an option for a third, a team option for a third. And James Hurst has some starting experience, left tackle, right tackle, and at guard in this league. And he played well when he had to step in last year. So they definitely have some options at that tackle position. And it's not that either you or I are disrespecting Teron Armstead. I mean, that young man is a fantastic tackle when he's on the field. And even 2019, he missed, I think, 2 or 3 games, but other than that, was healthy the whole year, which at that time was the healthiest string of games he had put together during his career. So his health is trending upward. But you got to remember, too, he's the elder statesman of that Saints offensive line. He's going to turn 30 before the end of the year, which is obviously still a young age, even for an offensive lineman. And he potentially still has a lot of good years left. But even with the escalation in the league salary cap in 2022, this team still has a lot of young, big contracts to pay. And I think, we know that Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis are always thinking 2 and 3 years ahead. And I think that with this deal, with Ramczyk, the selection of Landon Young and the re-signing of James Hurst, knowing that they're obviously also very adept at picking up offensive linemen in the mid and late rounds of the draft, I think all this is made with a move that they don't, that I agree with you, that they don't necessarily have Teron Armstead's in their plans beyond 2021.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I think, I kind of think James Hurst would get first crack at left tackle if Armstead goes down. But, for continuity. And I just feel like they look at Armstead as, you're a great player, but you're undependable. I cannot count on you, especially late in the season. So, I think they locked up Ramczyk. They feel they want to see what they have in Landon Young, and I'm throwing his name out there just because he's the newest Saint and he
Mhm.
does play tackle. Um, and looking at his stats and looking about where he was picked, he just has Zach Streif written all over him. Um, so I feel like they are looking at, like you said, they're looking 2 years down the road. This roster is going to get a makeover, much like the makeover they had in 2017.
Mhm.
That's not to say that they're expecting a grand slam draft like they had in 2017. I mean, that's so hard to try and do. But
Yeah.
if they can get a good handful of players in this draft, the next draft after that, and kind of rebuild that core around younger, cheaper players, you have your top players that you're paying a lot, but you got this little core of young players you're constantly bringing in, so you can start phasing out the older. You think of a player like Malcolm Jenkins, Cam Jordan, uh, Teron Armstead. These are all guys on the wrong side of 30 that the Saints will probably be looking to move on from. I certainly think that Peyton Hill's draft pick was less about Davenport than it was about Cam Jordan. You're looking at a player you're probably is your first attempt to draft somebody to groom to eventually replace Cam Jordan.
Yeah, I think you're really onto something there, and not enough people are talking about that. The fact that, remember, this offseason, the Saints also picked up Davenport's fifth-year rookie option,
Mm-hmm.
which means they are locked into this player for the next 2 years.
Yep.
If he has another poor season, and I think the only poor season that Davenport had was really last year. His first 2 years when he was on the field, he was extremely productive, or disruptive, maybe not productive from a sack point. But he earned the attention of double team blocking when he's on the field. But I know a lot of Saints fans are down on him, and I can understand why. But listen, because this team picked up that fifth-year option on Davenport, that means they're locked into him. They can't release him after 2021. They would take a $9.5 million salary cap hit. All
Right.
that would be in dead money. The only way out from under that is if you were to find a team willing to take on Davenport's contract in a trade. Well, the only way that would happen is if Davenport had a monster year.
Mm-hmm.
And if he has a monster year, the Saints aren't going to trade him. Because, like you said, Cam is coming off a down year, extremely down year by his standards. I think he's going to bounce back, but I don't think it's going to be to the point, to the week in and week out, all pro level that we've come to expect from Cam Jordan. He's just on the downside. I don't think he's going to fall off a cliff production wise, but he's on a downside. He needs productive linemen around him. And I think he'll have that this year. And I think we'll see a little bit of a bounce back. But you're right. The pick of Peyton Turner and the development of Carl Granderson, and even the signing of Passanio from the Chiefs, I think all that was not looking to replace Marcus Davenport, but obviously looking to fill the hole that they lost when Trey Hendrickson walked away, and a potential backup plan for Cam Jordan in 2021 or 2022 and beyond.
Yeah, and I agree with all that, and I think they still want to. They have a lot of high hopes for Davenport, because they like his versatility, they love his size, his wingspan. He's another player that needs to stay on the field, though. I think that's his biggest drawback. I mean, fans look at the sacks because that's kind of like the glory of a player. If you get a lot of sacks, you must be a great player. Right. We judge. Well, you look at the Ricky Jackson and Pat Swilling. Pat Swilling was the glory player because he got a lot of sacks. Ricky Jackson, holds the team record for sacks. Leroy Glover, he just goes on and on. Wayne Martin, Will Smith. We all recognize the players that sack quarterbacks. But what kind of gets overlooked a lot of times is guys who do the dirty work, like a Jim Wilkes, like a Tony Elliott or Derlin Moore, the guys who, they didn't get a lot of sacks, but man, they really tied up blockers, or they really got a lot of pressure, or did things to stop the run that we just, as a fan, it shows up. It doesn't show up in the stat sheet, but when you look at the film, you're like, good God, look at this. Look at 94. Look at him tie up guys. I'm talking about Jim Wilkes, not Cam Jordan. Or look at 74. Look what he's got. He's on a triple team block. Norman Hand, how useful Norman Hand was for Leroy Glover. Those kind of guys. So it's that doesn't mean that Davenport needs to play better. But this time last year, we were all wondering where the sacks were going to come from.
Mm-hmm.
And because, excuse me, Hendrickson was kind of an afterthought. Yep. In fact, people around this time last year were begging the Saints, go ahead and sign Jadeveon Clowney. We need a guy who can get sacks, and lo and behold, not only does Jadeveon Clowney end up being a bust, he does nothing because he's been on the injured list the whole season. Davenport has a breakout year. Not Davenport, I'm sorry. Hendrickson has his breakout year. So it's so hard to predict the future for a defensive lineman. But I think the Saints really they think he's this close that if he could just stay healthy, he's going to get over that hump and play. And I have a lot of hope for Davenport. I don't know if Cam Jordan can play at that level he was playing in 2018. That was unbelievable level of play. I mean, you go to that Detroit game, and he blocked, 9 passes, 10 passes? And he sacked, my favorite sack is when he threw the offensive, the right tackle into Stafford for a sack. But then, of course, the block pass was he blocked it, caught it himself in the end zone, got the touchdown, pretty much sealed the game. I mean, Cam Jordan was playing in a level was unheard of in 2018. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. So how much salary cap space did Ramczyk's contract loosen up?
When they extended Ramczyk, that opened up an additional, I think, 5.4, 5.5 million of salary cap space. Mm-hmm. So according to overthecap.com, as it stands right now today, New Orleans has 11.3 million. I think it's like 11.3 and change. So we'll call it 11.3 million of salary cap space. More than enough to bring in a couple of those big name free agents, veteran free agents that are still sitting out there waiting for teams to come to them. Probably bring in players. Yeah, I'm hoping 2 players on 1-year deals. Not so much prove it to me deals. Just players that are looking to get in training camp, get in with the team. Some looking into strong contenders. Hoping to cash in for a bigger contract in 2022. But yeah, the Saints will have about 11.3 million in salary cap space as we sit here tonight.
Well, we've already talked about this from last week, but who are your 2 players you probably want to bring in right away?
Well, I'm looking at 2 positions: cornerback first, linebacker second. Mm-hmm. My cornerback preference, I like a younger guy in Garyon Conley. He was a teammate, like you said, we talked about a few cornerbacks last week. He's a teammate of Lattimore's at Ohio State. He started after a slow start to his career. He started to pick it up in 2018, 2019, really show off that first round pedigree that he had before he missed 2020 with an injury. Conley's style, he is an in-your-face, man-to-man, aggressive, athletic cornerback, like a Lattimore, like an Eli Apple, like a Janoris Jenkins, like the guys that they've had the last couple of years. Outside of Conley, the big names everybody is talking about are 3 vets. Richard Sherman, who the team has been linked to the last few days. Again, we'll wait and see what happens with that. But Richard Sherman, Drake Kirkpatrick, or Steven Nelson, late of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Everybody knows about Kirkpatrick and Sherman, what they could bring to the table. I question how much they have left in the tank, but we only need him for 1 year. So I think that might be worth it. It would probably be worth the risk. Steven Nelson has great ball skills, but he's an off the ball guy. All his career with Kansas City first and then Pittsburgh the last 2 years, he was more successful in an off the ball scheme. I'll come up and play the ball, and he has great reaction skills at that, but he doesn't have the quick, fluid, athletic movement or quick twitch hips that you want in a man-to-man corner. So I don't know if I like that fit. But if you bring him in, Dennis Allen and Chris Richard, the secondary coach, they're both smart enough to tweak their scheme. You just want to see, I want to see them bring in somebody that would fit their scheme rather than them having to tweak their scheme just to kind of force feed a veteran. But those are the cornerbacks that I have my eye on. Linebackers, you got to start with Quan. I would love to see them bring back Quan Alexander. But if something, the Rams most notably have been another team linked to maybe having some interest in Quan in the last couple of days. Another huge name on the market is KJ Wright, who I think would be a magnificent fit in this system. I think Wright is 30 or 31 years old, so his best days are behind him, but he is still a more than capable linebacker. But you're probably looking at a bigger salary if you bring in KJ. Outside of that, you look for maybe a veteran guy that would be solid in coverage, like a Tahir Whitehead, or even a younger guy like Avery Williamson. You bring in those guys, purely for coverage, for a coverage standpoint, to take on an opposing tight end, let Demario Davis roam free a little bit, or to be athletic enough to track down a back coming out of the backfield. If you shift directions, you could always bring in a guy like Todd Davis, who, by the way, was originally a New Orleans Saint and got cut in, I think, 2014, if I'm not mistaken. But Davis was in Saints camp for a season. Davis is not the athletic kind of guy you want in coverage very often, but he is a solid run defender in base alignments and short yardage. But if you bring in a guy like Todd Davis, then you need Pete Werner or Zach Bond or even Caden Ellis to develop very quickly to be that third down and passing situation kind of guy. But those are the linebackers that I'd be looking
at. Ironically, we let off the show talking about Ryan Ramczyk. Well, the guy talking about linebackers, the guy who is available in free agency was the guy the Saints were originally going to pick in the first round, Reuben Foster. He is available as a free agent. And I would think it would be incredibly ironic. I really don't want to bring him in, but it would be incredibly ironic if the Saints signed him like to a little cheap 1-year deal, prove it deal, and just see what he can do for them. As a backup linebacker. But yeah, Quan Alexander is my first choice, only because we know what he looks like in this scheme. We know he plays very well with Demario Davis. The concern with him, just like the concern we have with Armstead and Davenport, is you have to stay healthy. He has not been able to stay healthy. Calvin's been beating this drum for a long time. Receiver, it's an issue because you have no veteran experience outside of, and I'm talking about veteran starting experience as a number 2 guy outside of Michael Thomas. Traquan Smith has been more of a slot guy. You've had guys that have played that are on this team, but you really don't have an Emmanuel Sanders kind of player. And, while you were talking, I was looking at the receivers available, and it's a scary list. It really is. I mean, it's the graveyard of forgotten favorites like Golden Tate, Des Bryant, which I can't believe he's still on this list. But you've got Danny Amendola, Tavion Austin. Where was his name? I just saw him a minute ago, and I lost it. Josh Gordon is still on this list. I mean,
he hasn't been suspended yet.
He'll probably get suspended the minute he gets signed by somebody.
Yeah.
So it's then of course old time Saints favorites Austin Carr and Tommy Lee Lewis on this list. Um, Alshon Jeffrey, is a shell of himself. Josh Doxson, just guys that Jordan Matthews, Marquise Lee, former high draft pick busts. So the only guy who looks halfway appealing on this list is Kenny Stills, the former Saint.
I like Dede. And another guy that jumped off the list to me is Dede Westbrook. I think Dede, he's underperformed a little bit since he's been in the league, but I think Dede would look really good in Sean Payton's offense if that light switch were to turn on. So yeah, either one of those two guys, I would love to see in a Saints uniform. But like you said a minute ago, we talked a little bit about receiver last week. It doesn't matter what any of us think. Well, it doesn't matter what any of us think when it comes to Sean Payton's opinion, period. But Sean tipped his hand during the draft and free agency by not going after anybody. I mean, he brought K'Wan Baker in with a 7th round pick, and I think Baker has a real bright future, potentially a real bright future. But again, you're talking about a 7th round pick. So statistically, the laws of average are against this young man of making the team. He could, and he could ball out. We've seen it before. But that tells us that Sean likes what he has. Obviously, in Michael Thomas, that's a category by itself. But it tells us that Coach Payton feels incredibly comfortable with Marquez Callaway, Deontay Harris, Traquan Smith, which scares me. But even Lil Jordan Humphrey and Jawan Johnson, players like that, he feels comfortable with their development and their knowledge of his system.
Yeah, it's definitely somebody who Sean Payton feels like the scheme will make the receiver better than he really is on paper.
And that he can, right.
Yeah, but you also had Drew Brees throwing you the ball.
Exactly.
So you've had an incredibly accurate, consistent quarterback who has mastered the offense to an extent that he takes over the 2-minute drill. He takes over most of the 4-minute drill. He acted as a coach on the field. He knew not only where everybody was supposed to be, but he knew where the defense was going to be and how to manipulate the defense to get these guys open. So if they couldn't generate the separation they needed, Brees could manipulate the defense to get them open. Now you've got two quarterbacks out there who do not have that level of experience. Last year, when Taysom Hill had the starting job after Brees went out with his injury, Hill primarily relied on Michael Thomas. I think Thomas had 9 catches in the first Falcons game. He really targeted his experienced receivers. Whereas the Traquan Smiths, I mean, Callaway got some stuff. Callaway did get his catches, but the other receivers just did not see much action. And we've now seen the social media videos that have come out with Jameis Winston out there throwing bombs to Traquan Smith. And fans are just eating this up. I have a hard time getting excited about these things because, in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah. And Jamarcus Russell threw a 80-yard pass on his knees in an empty field. And that's one of the reasons he was number 1 overall pick. Everybody looks great throwing with no rush to receivers running free, no jam, no press coverage. It looks great on an empty field, but that's not Sunday. That's I mean, that's what we're seeing. It looks fun. It's fun to see a guy throw bombs, but it's not football. And it's not an indication. And Taysom Hill hasn't done any of these videos. In fact, he thinks it's 1985. He's working out in Idaho somewhere. No cameras, no press, just out there doing whatever he does. So it's Mike Detillier commented about it, saying basically, Jameis Winston is not only taking the lead in this quarterback battle, but he's lapped him because of these social media videos. Do you feel like he's lapped him? Do you feel like these videos are helping Winston look like the quarterback of the future?
In the public eye, sure. Yeah, but the reality is this: anybody that believes that Taysom Hill is just sitting around this offseason, doing nothing but lifting weights or getting fat, then you haven't been paying attention to Taysom Hill, since he came into the league in 2017.
Right.
You know that he is working, and since he is given this year for the first time in his career, he is given a legitimate opportunity to win a job at quarterback. I would certainly think that Taysom Hill is intelligent enough to tweak his workouts, from being the jack of all trades kind of guy and the type of guy that has to hold up to the down in and down out pounding of coming off of the line or being a gunner on special teams, that kind of thing. That he's tweaking his workouts more towards a quarterback kind of thing. But certainly in the public eye, Jameis Winston looks like he's doing the part while Taysom Hill does not. I don't put a lot of stock in that other than this, and I think that this factor is very important. Jameis has obviously spent time with Traquan, with Jawan Johnson that I know for a fact, a little bit of time with Marquez Callaway, and a good amount of time with Adam Troutman. I think that all that is very important because not only are these young receivers, but they're building up a chemistry with Jameis, that cannot be done without working with each other. And Taysom has been on the field with these guys before, and had the 3-4 game audition at quarterback last year, which does give him a slight edge over Jameis as far as game experience goes. But I don't pay a lot of attention to the YouTube video. Granted, Jameis looks great, but the book, the criticism on him has never been arm strength or the power to arm or anything like that. The criticisms about him won't be answered until he gets into game conditions. But I do love the fact that Jameis is taking the time to work with a few of these young receivers, and I think that's the only way that I'll give him an edge based off of all these. We see videos from this quarterback, but not videos from that quarterback. Now, the only thing that we know is that Jameis is working with 3 or 4 or 5 of these Saints receivers, and I think that part is big.
Yeah, I totally agree because Jameis Winston's knock has never been his ability to make the pass, all the throws, and throw the deep ball, and do make a lot of big plays. His knock has always been decision making, especially when there's a lot of pressure on him. When he gets to the line, he thinks he sees one defense, and after the snap, the defense changes, and he goes ahead with his first read, which he thought the defense was, and makes the throw, and usually ends up as a turnover. Or that in games where his defense isn't holding up its end, he puts so much pressure on himself to get back in the game in 1 or 2 plays and starts forcing the ball when he really needs to be patient and just move the chains. Those are the 2 things that these workout videos don't show that. They don't show that improvement. Just like for me, Taysom Hill has 2 fundamental issues he needs to address. I think number 1 is he needs to speed up his internal clock.
Absolutely.
He needs to get rid of that ball quicker. For God's sake, stop patting the ball before you throw it. I mean, he does that, and it drives me crazy. And the second thing he needs to do is when he does make his decision to run, as a quarterback, protect the football. You
Yeah.
know, he gets in trouble holding that football out away from his body instead of holding up high and tight because he's not thinking like a running back. He's still thinking like a quarterback when he runs
Mm-hmm.
the football. Those are the two biggest issues I have with Taysom. And I think if he's spending a lot of time reading defenses and working on his passing mechanics with an individual coach, speeding up that clock, I think those are more useful workouts than to see him on Instagram, on Twitter, or whatever, throwing the 70-yard bombs, and again, that's not to diminish what Jameis is doing, because Jameis, he's got his own thing he has to address. And you said it perfectly. He doesn't have the time with these receivers. He's only been here for a year and didn't really even play last year. He needs to develop that timing with his receivers just so he gets a shot at getting this starting job. I think Peyton isn't paying attention to any of this stuff, and is only going to be focused on, what do you look like when we go into training camp? What do you look like when you get under center? Are you calling the plays confidently? Is the verbiage right? Are you getting all the verbiage? Because one of Taysom Hill's, his very first snap, the story was he said everything but motion. And the first thing Sean says to him is, where was the motion? Where was the motion? He's like, I completed the pass. He's like, no, where was the motion? You were supposed to say motion in there, and the Saints have the long verbiage, and that's the stuff that you really have to master, because everything that's being said tells the receivers their responsibility, tells the offensive line their responsibility, tells the backs their responsibility. And when you get to the line, you have to make your read and read the defense too. So you can do the kill, and change audible to different play. I think Taysom also needs to learn how to throw more of a touch pass when he throws those short passes. You don't have to break people's fingers. You don't have to rocket that ball in there. Just throw those touch passes. He was getting to that point by the fourth game, but it still wasn't there yet. So
and his when he decides to check it down, and that's when Kamara gets the majority of his usage. Taysom definitely has to be more decisive in his check down. And when I watched Taysom Hill last year, I saw when he would check the ball down to Kamara, he would make the decision to do so too late. Mm-hmm. And his release is slower anyway, because A, he has that elongated release, and mm-hmm. B, before that even happens, like you said, he passed the ball. So he's telegraphing, he's elongating his release, and he's not being nearly decisive and fast enough in making the decision. I got to get the ball to Kamara or whomever, down low, and get the ball into their hands to let them do something with it. So by the time he'd do that, there'd already be three defenders around your third and fourth option. Yep. That makes it not only an ineffective play, but makes it a high turnover risk too. So Taysom definitely got to work on all that stuff. And like I said, just because we're not seeing it on video, if you don't think Taysom Hill is working out this offseason, mm-hmm. and working specifically to being the New Orleans Saints quarterback, then you're out of your mind. I still believe that Jameis Winston is going to be the Saints starting quarterback, but I don't think that these workout videos, have put him at a distinct advantage over Taysom at all. In the public eye, sure. But like you said, Sean Payton, Pete Carmichael, the guys that are making these decisions, they don't care about that. They're in touch with these guys every single day. They know what they're doing. They know what they're not doing. And they know what they are telling these quarterbacks to do. And that's what's important, the stuff behind closed doors.
Yeah, if Taysom has been someone who says, I'm going to do everything that Drew Brees does. Well, one of the things Brees used to do in the offseason is work out with Tom House on his mechanics. And if Taysom is working on his mechanics and he's got a coach and he tells him, look, I need to speed up this clock, I need to make the faster decisions, and he works on that, he has a tremendous advantage in there. There's two games, both of them the Atlanta games. Two plays that I felt, because I really get it bugs me when I hear people say, well, Taysom's not a quarterback. He is a quarterback. I mean, a guy who's not a quarterback can't throw the ball. I mean, that's the reality. He is a quarterback. He's not a polished quarterback. He's not ready to be, or in what we've seen in his body of work so far, he may not be ready to be a 16 game starter. But I think he is an NFL level quarterback. I think the weaknesses we talked about prevent him from being a successful NFL quarterback. And that's the difference. There are guys out there who are not NFL quarterbacks because they lack the physical skills to be a quarterback. Taysom doesn't lack the physical skills. He doesn't lack the mental ability to play the position either. He needs the seasoning he never got at BYU, and the seasoning he needs to be successful at the NFL level. I think that's the weakness, and that a lot of that comes with improving your mechanics. But there were two games, both Atlanta games, where I really saw NFL level throws out of Taysom Hill. One of them was I think it was a 3rd and 10, maybe 3rd and 17 play in Atlanta, about midfield. And Taysom took a 3-step drop, planted that back foot in the ground, drove the ball, twisted his hips, drove that ball across the field, hit Michael Thomas on a sideline pass, put that ball only where Thomas could get it, not to the shoulder, but right in front of him. And he caught the ball, and it was a beautiful throw. The camera was pulled pretty far back, so you got a good look at that. And it was a rocket that came straight across and hit Thomas right there. That was an NFL throw. That was a decisive. That shows you his potential. He doesn't do that consistently, and that's his weakness. The other one was against Atlanta, this time in New Orleans. Chaos is all around him. And I was thinking when I was at the game, I was thinking he's going to tuck it in and run. He didn't. He held on to the ball. He slid up in the pocket as players are coming around him, and he hit Michael Thomas on a beautiful crossing route. Granted, both throws was to Thomas. Thomas is, if you put the ball anywhere around him, he's probably going to catch it.
Right.
But it was just the fact that he slid up in the pocket and made the throw, didn't decide, what, I'm just going to run it. He made the right decision to throw the ball. And those were two plays where I'm like, that's what we want to see. But we need to see that more than two plays. We need to see that consistently.
Yeah, we do. And and I've said it before. I was pleasantly surprised by Taysom's general pocket presence last year. Again, and we saw a very, very inexperienced and unpolished quarterback, but we all expected to see that. I was surprised at how I expected Sean, Coach Payton, to tell him, make one read, probably to Thomas. If it's not there, you tuck it and run.
Yep.
And that didn't happen for the most part, and especially with the two Falcons games. Now, let's remember, Atlanta was just abysmally bad on defense too.
Yeah.
But still, they're an NFL defense nonetheless. And Taysom, I remember, and I think it was both Atlanta games, he had like two throws to Emmanuel Sanders and one throw to Traquan Smith, all down the field. The two to Sanders drew pass interference calls. One would have been an easy touchdown, and the other was Traquan Smith just being Traquan Smith. Otherwise, that would have been a big play too. Otherwise, Taysom's passing stats would have been even better than what they were. And I don't even think he played badly in the Eagles game, especially when they had to come from behind, when they were not playing well on either side of the ball early on. He showed some pretty decent composure. Again, the delayed decision making, the issues with the mechanics, and just the overall indecisiveness did come back to bite him. But he did show fairly decent composure. And even though Taysom Hill has been in the league since 2017, his versatility and athleticism have actually worked against him as a quarterback. Because again, he's never had an opportunity for a coach to say, all right, Taysom, we're going to work on this today. We're going to work on the 2-minute drill. We're going to work on the 4-minute drill. We're going to work on nothing but timing passes. And why? The reason why he's never gotten that opportunity is because Taysom, we need to work you into the packages as a tight end. We need to work you into the packages as a wildcat quarterback coming out of the backfield, split out wide. Taysom, special teams coaches need you over here for gunner duties. So, I mean, because of that, he's never got the work he's needed as a quarterback. So he's very much a rookie. And other than sitting in the room and on the sidelines with Breeze and Peyton, and then those offensive skill positions. Other than sitting with them, his experience as a quarterback is not much more than what Ian Book has, who's obviously coming into his first NFL season. So I'm willing to cut him a little bit of a slack, but I'm really interested to see how he's going to perform in this preseason game. We're going to know real quick who's going to win the quarterback job, real quick.
I think so too, and you have to give, and this much is true. You have to give Winston the credit, even if you didn't see any of if there weren't any workout videos or anything like that out there. Winston does have the edge because Winston has the starting experience. He started in this league for over 5 years. Okay. He's got the stats. He's got the awards. He was #1 overall draft pick. He's got the Heisman in his back. I think he got a Heisman. Yeah. I know he's got a national championship. But anyway, he's got all the trophies and everything on his resume to show that he should be an NFL starting quarterback. And like we said in the beginning of this conversation, the questions we have about Winston is his decision-making in the game time, when the pressure's on you. Are you going to make the right decisions with the football, or are you going to press and try and make the big play instead of taking what the defense gave you? And so many fans want to make Winston to be the steal because we want to have the situation that Green Bay has had. That the 49ers had, where you went from Montana the Young, or you went from Favre to Rodgers. You want to be in that situation where you have your quarterback of the future. Winston's 26 years old. It would be great if he turns out to be a steal and you're able to turn him into a franchise quarterback. And here he is playing for 15 years, another 15 years for you, where you have that stability and excellence as a team. You don't have to worry about a quarterback for 15 years because Winston's got it. But people kind of go overboard on this. I'm reading things like, well, Winston had a terrible offensive line and terrible receivers. Really? He's had Mike Evans the whole time. He's had Godfrey. He's had Adam. He's had the guy who doesn't want to take the vaccine. He's now in Buffalo. I can't think of his name. Humphreys. A guy that the Saints fans wanted as a free agent. He's had good had good offensive linemen. Really, the difference was this past year for Brady, he got a left tackle they didn't have. But as far as the middle of that defense, he's had good offensive linemen. Not great, but good offensive linemen. He's had great tight ends for him. Yeah. Cameron Brate, a former Saint. There was a lot of he did have a lot of weapons. But that doesn't mean, because he had to throw for over 4,000 yards twice, 5,000 yards 2 years ago. I mean, to put up those numbers, you got to have somebody catching these passes.
Right.
I mean, and you got to have somebody who can protect you long enough to throw these balls. Tampa's problem has always been consistency and the special teams, especially
Yeah.
the kicking game. That's always held Tampa back. And it's what cost the coaching job for the guy who was the offensive coordinator now for the Falcons. I just forgot his name. It's not Mike Mularkey. It's the guy that Sean Payton smacked in the chest and he got all upset. I can't think of his name. Yeah, it'll come to me. Calvin still beating that drum. I'm more concerned about these bum ass receivers in Winston. But he's had his issues in Tampa, and a lot of it is because when you get drafted number 1 overall, you're expected to be the savior.
Yeah.
And the question is, can he become part of the team and not seen as a savior, not compete against the ghost of Drew Brees and feel like he's got to throw for 5,000 yards. He's got to throw for 30 touchdowns. He's got to do all these things to justify him being out there. Can he move back more into the guy who's just running this offense? If he can just run the offense and make the right decisions and show better accuracy than he has shown in Tampa, he should win this job pretty easily. Because he's got the seasoning that the stuff that we were just talking about with Hill does not. And I think, and I've said this for a while with Sean, I think we're going to see a lot of Woodstock kind of play with Winston, with Jameis and Hill, and
I'm old enough to remember Woodstock too. So.
Yeah. They call it. I think Loomis kind of let slip. They called him Jameston. Yeah. You're going to see Jameis in there, but you're going to see a lot of Winston. I mean, you're going to see a lot of Hill in there too, playing quarterback, doing not just being a running threat, but also a passing threat, to get these receivers open. If you got to scheme these receivers open, you're going to have to be more creative with your quarterback too. And if you're going to have to do that, you may have, Taysom Hill back there, and he'll run 2 or 3 times, but then one of the times he's going to actually run a bootleg and throw the ball, especially if they pull everybody in. So you're going to see. I think you're going to see a lot of, especially if Winston seems to be struggling and the offense is not really moving. He looks at Taysom as a guy who's is a spark. Let's run the fake punt with Taysom. Let's do something. So I jokingly said, when they talked about the deep ball coming back and stuff like that, I said, man, when did Saints fans become Al Davis? Yeah. I mean, and I played the clip. I stuck the clip on there. There's a lot more to the clip, but the whole time I'm reading all these things about the deep balls coming back, we got deep ball coming back. I'm like, this is Al Davis talking with the Raiders and the history of the Raiders. Football live by the footballs live by this maxim of take what the defense gives you. I have always operated on a different philosophy of take what we want. I'm like, holy crap, let's just go ahead and Jameis, you gotta get rid of the 2. You gotta put on 3. It's got to be black and white now. Can't be black and gold. We'll just put LaMonica on the back, and you're the Mad Bomber again. We'll get Warren Wells out of prison if he's still alive. We'll get, we'll get Fred Blitnikoff, Dave Casper, Cliff Branch. We'll just do it all, and we're going vertical. We're going deep because Al Davis says, it's like having a bomb and be willing to use it. That's how some of the people were talking, and I'm just like, man, it doesn't work that way.
And some of these same fans 4 or 5 years ago at this time, these same exact people, some of them were saying, the Saints need to run the bleepity bleep ball and they need to have bleepity bleep balance. And oh God. And
My
this has been
favorite was we score too quickly. The defense is exhausted. We score too quickly. Yeah. Yes. I know. Yeah.
But listen, as far as the people that, and it's usually one side or the other, extremists. The people that are saying Jameis Winston is the worst quarterback to ever step onto the football field. And then there's the other side of that coin. The people are saying, none of this was Jameis's fault in Tampa. No, the truth is somewhere in between. Don't tell me that Jameis didn't have any wide receivers in Tampa Bay. Oh my God, most quarterbacks would have killed to have the crew of wide receivers. You mentioned Humphreys and Evans and Godwin. You forgot Deshaun Jackson still had some left in the tank. When he was with Tampa, he had Braid, he had O.J. Howard. I think I'm missing another tight end. And like you said, he had an adequate offensive line. Now, part of that, they weren't able to protect Winston because A, the left tackle issues, but B, they never tweaked their scheme. They had him holding on to the ball too long. And Tampa never had a consistent running game either.
To throw that deep ball,
Exactly. Exactly. Play action won't work when the opponent knows you can't run the damn ball. And Tampa rarely had even an average defense when Winston was there. So he was always not necessarily. Well, he was always either trying to play from behind because of early mistakes, made by the offense and the defense, or just trying to keep pace with the point-a-minute offenses like Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, Cam Newton. Mm-hmm. And all of that is a recipe for disaster in the first place. And then you consider in Winston's 5 years in Tampa Bay, he had 3 different head coaches and 4 offensive coordinators. There's zero continuity here. And that was one of the things that had Jameis so excited when he got to New Orleans was the fact that Brees, Peyton, Carmichael, et cetera, they'd all been together for the last 14 and 15 years.
Yep.
And I think that there's a lot of excitement, inside that Saints locker room right now, up to and including Sean Payton. No disrespect to Drew Brees. I think Sean Payton was looking forward to this day for the last couple of years. He knew what he had in Brees, and the two of them were extremely close, like legendarily close, as far as a working relationship goes. But Sean's ego and his competitive juices have always been, and I told this to people when I would be standing on the sidelines at Greenbrier training camp in 2014, 15, 16. People around me were saying, Coach Payton's going to retire when Brees is going to retire. No, he's not. No, he's not. Because Sean wants this day to prove to everyone how smart he is. And I know that sounds so bad to say it, but that's reality. That's what makes Sean so great as a coach too. And we're going to see how great he is. But he is, like you said a minute ago, he is going to have a game plan. And he said it too, specifically tailored. He said specifically tailored for Taysom or Jameis, whoever wins the job. But the reality is it's probably meshed somewhere in between. And this is still, you might want to call them bum-ass receivers. Sean likes what he has. Avery, I think, was the one that kept saying that. And I could see your Calvin. I could see your skepticism. I can't. But I think we're going to see some nice things from Deontay Harris this year. I think we're going to see a nice progression from Marquez Callaway. And if Traquan Smith can't perform well in the type of offense that they're going to run now, then Traquan Smith needs to be selling insurance or something. And Michael Thomas is going to continue to be Michael Thomas, the best security blanket an NFL quarterback could have. This is going to be a productive offense. There's going to be some speed bumps. Of course there is, because you don't have number 9 on the sideline. And even with his diminishing skills, the respect that opponents had for him made up for a lot of that, because they knew by that last year, they knew that he couldn't do it week in and week out, play in and play out, but they still knew he could do it from time to time. So that respect earned you a lot. And that's not going to be there. So Taysom or Jameis, whoever wins the job, or the both of them, the both of them. Hey, Calvin, I'm glad you're not my coach, buddy.
And I never said bum ass receivers. and this kind of ties in what you were just saying with Peyton's ego. I think that Peyton's ego is such that, yes, he and Drew Brees were tied at the hip, and he loved that. They were of the same mindset. They could finish each other's sentences. He loved that relationship. At the same time, he is now in a position where he has to prove himself all over again. It's 2006 again in Sean Payton's mind. I have to take this team and prove that we can lose a guy like a Drew Brees and we can be as good, if not even better, because of who I am as a play caller and what this team can do. I designed this offense around Drew Brees' strength. I can design an offense around whoever my quarterback is and their strength. So, I can see that. I'm concerned about the players that he's going to design this offense around.
Yeah.
That's my concern. I'm not concerned that Peyton's not going to be able to come up with a great game plan. I'm concerned about how it's going to get executed. That's where my issues lie, and it has to do with the two individuals who are going to be the quarterback.
And not only that, but we are also counting on big development from Deontay Harris, Marquez Callaway, and a couple of those other young receivers. So there is big reason to have doubts in these receivers and these quarterbacks. There is legitimate reason to have these doubts until they prove that there's not. But I'll tell you, there's some great equalizers in those big uglies up front, Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas. The best players at their respective positions in the league, and that makes up for a lot of woes. And that's why I think that this Saints offense, unless they're mistake prone from the start, and again, there's going to be some bumps in the road, and there's plenty of reason for all of us to have doubts until these players prove that they're not. But there's plenty of pieces in place for a very, very good offense in 2021.
Oh, look who just popped in. Great, Sean. That's great. He watched the show last week and loved it, and I'm glad he joined on tonight too. So, yeah, I agree totally with you, Bob, because I've this offense is too talented, especially if you just go through Thomas and Kamara, you're going to be able to do a lot.
Yeah.
As long as you don't turn the ball over or make stupid mistakes, you should remain a productive offense. Again, what's our weaknesses with the two guys that we have at quarterback? Turnovers, so it is a concern. You've got to be concerned about that. You're lying to yourself if you're not. But I agree with what you had said. I think Peyton's looking at this as 2006 all over again, that this is a tremendous challenge for him as a coach and egotist, and a good, healthy egotist. I'm going to show the league that I'm not Bill Belichick, that I'm not going to lose my franchise quarterback and go 6-10, or in this case, 6-11, because there's 17 games. We're still going to win. We're still going to be in the playoffs. We're able to beat Tampa. We can do some damage no matter who's at quarterback. So, let's see. Avery says, article came out today saying there's a real chance Ingram doesn't make it out of the Texans camp for money reasons. Love to see him back. The thing about Ingram that I want to see back is I want him, even though Alvin Kamara is probably going to pass him up, I'd like to see Ingram get the all-time rushing mark away from Deuce. I'd like to see him come back just for that, because he's so close. And for somebody who shared so much time, his entire career, I'd like to see Ingram come back to finish that. I do think Alvin Kamara is going to end up being the all-time Saints leading rusher before it's all said and done. If not, pass up. I think he's 2 touchdowns or 1 touchdown away from the all-time touchdown mark for a running back. I think 51 is what Ingram has right now. And I think Kamara's like at 49 or 48, something ridiculous like that. He's very close.
He is very close. And if you bear with me, I literally wrote an article about this like a week or two ago.
Mm-hmm.
About different records that are within reach of some of these players, specifically Kamara. Rushing touchdowns, Mark Ingram 50, Kamara has 43.
43. Okay.
Yeah, he could get that in the first 3 games.
Yeah.
Even total touchdowns, Marcus Colston has 72, Kamara has 59. So with another Kamara needs 14 to pass him. He had 21 last year, so.
Right. And it used to be the high water mark was Dalton Hilliard's 18.
Yeah.
And Dalton Hilliard, I can remember that 89 season, and just it seemed like Dalton Hilliard did everything in that offense. But it seemed like Kamara's 21 touchdowns last year was just like, let me think. I can think of the 6 he did on Christmas Day, but I'm just trying to think. Yeah, he was in the end zone a lot. It wasn't. There was so much other stuff going on. He scores 21 touchdowns, and you're like, oh yeah, he did do that.
I mean, yeah, his rookie year he had 14, 13 offensively in that kick return. Second year he had 18. He had tied Hilliard's record that year.
Yeah.
He was injury plagued in 2019, but still had I think 15 or 1,600 all-purpose yards.
Right.
Kamara is the best offensive threat, dual offensive threat in the league.
Absolutely.
Hands down.
Absolutely.
And, you're right. I respect Mark Ingram. I love Mark Ingram, as a matter of fact. I think the Saints were comfortable in moving on with Latavius Murray when Ingram made the decision a couple years ago. And as soon as Latavius Murray made it through the first and second wave of cap casualties, I think that it showed us that this team, Sean Payton, is perfectly content at moving forward with Kamara and Latavius Murray as his 1-2 punch, with Ty Montgomery providing some really high quality depth. So I think even if Mark Ingram hits the open market, he won't be back in a New Orleans Saints uniform.
Yeah, I this is like the same question people have about Jimmy Graham. I think Jimmy Graham had a shot before he went to Green Bay. I think the Saints were interested enough in him to give him an opportunity. And once he decided to go with Green Bay, I think that was then they're like, okay, fine, it's done. You're going to be past your prime by the time you next hit free agency. And I think you see that right now. So, and the bad part about it is, of course, they've been spending the past, 6 years trying to replace Jimmy Graham. You thought you may have had it with Jared Cook as the most recent one, and Jared Cook put the ball on the ground to me because I saw more Graham type routes run with Cook than I saw with any other tight end. And I think him putting the ball on the ground as much as he did really ended up turning the Saints off to him.
It did. Although I still believe that they made that trade in the 2020 draft to move up and get out Adam Troutman. As soon as they did that, I knew that Jared Cook was not going to be a Saint in 2021. For salary reasons. It didn't have anything to do with performance at the time. It was just an easier decision to make because Jared did have so many problems with fumbling. And he had some games where he ran some really lackadaisical routes too. I
think everybody does.
Yeah. The book on Cook was that he tended to get lazy as a player throughout his career. We didn't see much of that in 2019. We did last year. And that's the issue that I had with him even before the fumbling. But again, I never, as soon as they drafted Troutman, I knew that he was going to be your starting tight end in 2021. Cook just made the decision much easier for the team.
his route running was terrible in 2020. It that one that even Troy Aikman, who never says anything useful, actually broke down the play and talked about a route that Cook ran, and he just ran it underneath. And it was the Christmas Day game, in fact. He just did a rounded off route that ran underneath and gave the defensive back an easy interception because he didn't run it a sharp cut. And you saw that quite a few times. And then, of course, the playoff game that he really, beyond everything else, and I've talked about this over and over again, but beyond the interceptions by Drew and the supposedly can't throw the deep ball and all that stuff, to me, that play of him fumbling on that big reception down the middle of the field when that was probably going to be another touchdown drive, and you go up by 14. It changes. It takes away the run from Tampa. They're going to throw the ball now. It makes it easier on your defense. This is now when you can turn Hendrickson loose. And because that happened and Tampa gets the lead, they're able to run the ball and change the whole complexion of the game. I'll never forgive him for that. He's now up on my list with Vinovich, in 2018, the Falcons with Big Ben and Grover Clemmer with the pass interference and Russell Erxleben in 79. I mean, he's now in that category of Saints enemies. So anyway, Bob, we need to wrap up tonight. We kind of went over your time. I know it's well after 10 o'clock in your time. Tell us real quick the stuff that you got working, that you're doing right now, and where people can find you.
First of all, again, thank you so much for having me, Alan. Under the Domers, I love you guys. I do. It has been an honor to sit on the panel the last couple of weeks. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here. But Sean, if you're still listening, I'm going to be here until you guys boot me off at this point. But I can be followed on Facebook. Just look for Bob Rose, BOBROSE. Obviously over on Twitter at BobbyR2613. All of my writings and my work are through the Saints News Network, at Saints News on Twitter, or Saints News Network on Facebook, or just go to the SI.com team channel. Because we do all the articles for the New Orleans Saints for the SportsIllustrated.com site. As far as the next few days, tomorrow's article, and I don't know how much longer I could stay awake to finish it tonight, but it'll be out mid to late morning tomorrow. Everybody's making a big deal about where the Saints' positions of need are, where their weakest positions are. And I can see why. We've been talking about it all night. A lot of people are losing sight about a couple of the Saints position core units that are extremely strong. And I'm going to be talking about that in an article tomorrow. And then we get into some fun conversations like training camp. A couple veterans, I think, that are on the training camp bubble, sitting about 3 weeks out. I'll start to cover some of that. And then obviously, as a unit, Saints News Network, that is, we're going to start to break down some of the individual training camp battles, for roster spots. And that's always a fun conversation too. And yeah, there might be a couple wide receivers mentioned, Calvin. There'll be some nice battles there.
Calvin reminds me of Rain Man, got 50 minutes of Wapner, Kmart, receiver. So no, I think Calvin, we do agree with you on a lot of this. I'm we're a Michael Thomas injury away from a disaster at receiver. I really feel that way. Emmanuel Sanders bailed us out last year, enabled us to ride out Thomas's injury. There is no Emmanuel Sanders on the roster this year, and I don't feel like anybody can step into that role. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Calvin. I just, it's tough. It really is. D-line is strength. I think offensive line's is strength. And I think those are the two most important things.
We'll bury the lead because I already mentioned it in an article, but offensive line, both lines, offensive and defensive line, it's safety. Not enough people are talking about how good these safeties are. and the running back position. And we talked about that earlier tonight. Those
Yep.
are the four positions that I think
Absolutely.
for New Orleans are as strong as any position core in the league.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And next couple of weeks, whenever Sean comes back, we're supposed to talk with the worst Saints players. That was my fill in for to kind of cover during the slow months of summer before training camp starts. But that's one of the things I want to talk about next couple of weeks is special teams battles. This will be the first year we don't have Morstead, and we saw last year at the end of the year, it seemed like one game a week. I mean, one series a week. Will Lutz was missing field goals and extra points. So special teams, big question mark this year. So yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about over the next couple of weeks, in as we get close to training camp. So, anyway. Thanks, Bob, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us. And Bob, as always, you're welcome to this show anytime. We have to get you on here when we got Sean on here too. So we'll probably.
Sure. And I want to join in on that worst players conversation. I got a few select words about Jairus Byrd. So
absolutely, absolutely. We got, and I can go dig through my history and bring up guys from the past that people are like, who? Yeah. So anyway. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time under the dome. Good night, everybody.